So today we have a plethora of Star Wars news. We're going to be focusing on the dark side with the Acolyte, and stay tuned because we're also going to be talking about The Mandalorian Season 3. Enjoy! The Acolyte showrunner Leslie Headland has teased the kind of Jedi that we're going to see, and Dafne Keen, who's in the show, is now confirmed to be playing a Theelin Jedi. She describes her character visually as David Bowie meets Star Wars. In her own words, she says, "I have a little mallet, I have horns, it's cute." Now for Leslie Headland, the idea came from watching Return of the Jedi. The first ever Theelin character at Jabba's palace was Ristal Sant. You may remember her as the dancer and backup singer during the Max Rebo Band scene. With her flaming red hair, horned head and striking spot pattern, Ristal was a standout in a controversial extended sequence. Controversial because some fans didn't like a lot of the changes in the special editions in the 90s. Now Sant also appears in the Mandalorian Season 2 finale at Jabba's palace when Boba takes over from Bib Fortuna. She also features in the Lego set for that scene, although Dave Filoni won't confirm if it is the same Theelin or a different one. But as a Star Wars Rebels fan, my favourite Theelin in the entire franchise is Guti Teres, a member of Iron Squadron. According to Leslie Headland, who's a massive Star Wars fan, when given the keys to her own Star Wars series, she leapt up at the chance to bring Theelins to the forefront of the Acolyte in the form of a Jedi. Charlie Barnett, who also plays a Jedi, said, "Daphne's character could definitely kick my ass." The inclusion of a Theelin is just one of many ambitious ideas Headland had for the show. For example, and we've spoken about this in the past, she describes the Acolyte as Kill Bill meets Frozen, invoking a very unlikely film pairing, but she does say, "It sort of was a joke, but it was my elevator pitch to Kathleen Kennedy. I want to take the revisionist version of female villains that you see in a fairy tale media and tell it through that lens. Kill Bill meets Frozen." The showrunner also teased Wuxia-inspired fight sequences on the show, and to that end, Headland is very proud of her stellar cast. And bear in mind guys, we're getting a Wookiee Jedi. That's massive. That's a huge step. We did see one in other High Republic media called Buriaga. This one is a Jedi Master called Kel Naka, and Yunus Suotomo, who's playing him, says he's trying to embody Chewie if he was a Jedi. And bear in mind he's played Chewbacca in the Disney Star Wars films, so he's very well equipped and experienced in playing giant furry labradoodles. I mean, Wookiees. And so now, my dear friends, let's talk about The Mandalorian. We've not seen the last of Kelleran Beck. There is more to the flashback of him saving Grogu. Ahmed Best's return to Star Wars was celebrated by the fandom over, and now Dave Filoni says there could be more in Season 4. In his own words, the producer said, quote, "It's always a possibility. We love Ahmed, and he did such a great job. It was a real thrill for us to get him involved." Filoni also mentions the process was collaborative. They asked him what he thought about various ideas, various ways that Kelleran saves Grogu, and they basically worked together. Instead of telling him you're playing this character and this is what you've got to do, they asked him for his feedback as well. So could we see more Kelleran in that flashback? I think the answer is definitely. And could he play Jar Jar again in the future? I would love for that to happen. In other Mandalorian news, Bo-Katan actress Katie Sackhoff has answered a very naughty question. There is a moment in the Clone Wars that sometimes I look back and think, how did they get away with that? That comes from the Clone Wars Season 4 Episode 14. Well, Bo-Katan actress Katie Sackhoff was asked, would she ever do that again to another character? Now this was all said in jest, but she replies, "Probably not, but maybe if it was a really good friend, I might. I don't know, it depends." She says, "I'm sure it will be referenced." Now some fans have a lot of hope for Bo-Katan appearing in the Ahsoka show. She knew where Ahsoka was in The Mandalorian Season 2, so the two have kept in touch over the years. Again, I don't know if this is something they're going to include. I don't think this is the way the two characters are going to greet each other when they meet. So recently, Emilia Clarke, who plays Qi'ra in Solo: A Star Wars Story, but is also involved in the MCU, spoke about how franchises like Marvel can get too confusing. Now you might be wondering, well Meg, what's this got to do with Star Wars? Because it's a very similar thing when it comes to Disney+. For diehard fans like you and me, we understand it. We know when shows take place, whether it's The Mandalorian, which is 5 years after Return of the Jedi, The Book of Boba Fett the same, Obi-Wan Kenobi nearly a decade after Revenge of the Sith, and so on and so forth. But what about for casual fans? Because I've got a lot of friends in real life who are big Star Wars fans, they saw the films, but when it comes to the TV shows like Book of Boba Fett, Kenobi, some of the animated stuff like Clone Wars and Rebels, they do get a little bit confused, and this applies to a lot of fans online as well. Now, the actress who played Kira in Solo: A Star Wars Story does not name drop Star Wars, but rather the MCU. She's gonna be portraying Talos' daughter in Secret Invasion, and she recently spoke with Empire Magazine about how the upcoming series is gonna tie into the greater MCU. She says, quote, "These franchises can get into dangerous territory, warning how franchises can become convoluted if you start to lose those casual fans." Now, for those of us who are diehard fans who read the books and the comics, I'm talking about Star Wars here. We watch the shows and the movies, we know the general greater landscape, the characters around during different time periods, but to some, it might seem a bit complicated. So I bring this up in the context of Ahsoka, because Dave Filoni on several occasions, and Natasha Liu as well, have mentioned that while Star Wars Ahsoka is a sequel to Rebels, you don't have to have seen it. It's great if you have though, because you're gonna get a better appreciation for these characters and the journeys they've already been through. Even if those are not referenced, you'll understand their motives, some of their decisions, especially with Sabine Wren, who's gonna face off against Thrawn's assassins, Baylan and Shin. You might be wondering, well, why does she have Ezra's lightsaber? What is this green lightsaber? And for those of us who've seen Rebels, we know the context, but for fans who haven't, it might be slightly confusing, and even if you understand the reason, to really comprehend and appreciate the significance of that weapon and why Sabine has it amongst everyone else, it helps to have seen Rebels and understand the dynamic and the friendship between Ezra and Sabine Wren. And to this end, I think it's fantastic Dave Filoni's taken a step back. He's written every episode of the Ahsoka show, but making sure that it's for every single type of fan. Those who know who Thrawn is, who read Heir to the Empire, Dark Force Rising, The Last Command, some of the more recent Thrawn books, those who saw Star Wars Rebels, and those who've been on this journey with Ahsoka right from the start, but also for fans who've not read or seen any of that. And there are many fans who got introduced to the character of Ahsoka through The Mandalorian. We can't underestimate the amount of fans who got introduced to her through that show. Through Season 2, Chapter 13, The Jedi, one of the best live-action episodes of Star Wars in general, I would say. So I'm looking at what Amelia said, and I'm applying it to Star Wars because it does apply. Marvel and Star Wars not only have a big overlap in fans, but also they're two of the biggest properties under Disney at the moment. Here's what Amelia said: "It's definitely a show for the fans, but it's also a show that my mum, who doesn't watch Marvel, will watch and get. Do you know what I mean? You can get into dangerous territory sometimes with this sort of genre, where if you haven't watched all 17 other films and shows, you're not going to get it. This isn't that at all, and as I say, just to reiterate, this is about Marvel's Secret Invasion, but the same applies to Star Wars. Now, to give credit to Lucasfilm and Disney+, the way it's laid out on the platform is very clear. They do the timelines thing, they give you essential episodes, and they do sort of give you the content you need before a big show, so I think they're going to promote Star Wars Rebels quite a lot before Ahsoka, and certain episodes of the Clone Wars, notably when she walks away from the Jedi Order and what that means. And Star Wars is different to Marvel. To the credit of many showrunners, a lot of these new Star Wars shows do have a format where even if you don't understand anything going in, they do explain what you need to know, and I think that was what was so appealing about The Mandalorian when it started. It was so innocent, such a basic storyline, and anyone could grasp it. Of course, as I say, there will be many fans who are familiar with KOTOR, who understood Mandalorian culture long before the show, those of us who saw the Clone Wars and Star Wars Rebels to understand the significance of the Darksaber, understanding George Lucas's original vision for Jango Fett and Boba. If you were into Mandalorians before, you did get a different experience out of the show, but fundamentally, you didn't have to know any of that going in. So to Lucasfilm's credit, they have been doing a good job at that. But I think the Ahsoka show is going to be a bit different, because there are tons of fans who don't even know who Thrawn is. They didn't read the books, they didn't watch Star Wars Rebels, and to them, he's just a vague expanded universe villain. Well, the good news is, if you've not consumed any of that content, Dave Filoni and Timothy Zahn are making sure this show is accessible. But I really can't wait for it, and even if they did go down the Die Hard route, I'd be over the moon. I'm still over the moon, I'm still very hyped for this show. I think it's going to give us a very consistent Star Wars vision because Dave Filoni wrote every single episode. There are different directors, but in terms of writing, there will be some consistency wherever it goes, so very exciting stuff indeed. Share your thoughts on this in the comments down below.